I look like a hairless baby on our little thumbnail thing, and I keep thinking it. And I have been sitting on this for so long. And that is how I'm starting tonight's episode, is that I am begging you to change the thumbnail picture of myself because I look like a hairless child.
Right. Provide me a picture. I will send it along to the great Jacob Patrick, and I'll see what he can do for sure.
Hello, everyone, and welcome.
Welcome to another episode of Two Mediocre White Dudes on Film. I am Mediocre White Dude number 1, PLD. That's Mediocre White Dude number 2, PJ Campbell.
And you're right. You are number 1 this week because you are going to beat me by like a hair in fantasy football in just like the dumbest way possible.
The worst team I have ever put forth in fantasy football.
I know.
And yet I'm still winning somehow in this game. Only this week, though. I'm like 3 and I don't even know, 8, 9, 10.
And it was not without my lack of trying. It was just that everyone on my team somehow underperformed this week for the most part. And you had one player who overperformed so hard that like I couldn't have come up with that as even like a potential thing. You had a player who scored 42 points or something.
No, I know. The funniest part about it is that I honestly, I always stick through it to the end of the season anyway. I usually do. I'm so bad this year. I was like 2-8. I was out of it. I even forgot to do it until Mike Deacon was like, just let PJ win. I'm like, oh, I should at least switch my lineup because I had everybody in my lineup was like on bye weeks. I had like 4 people in bye weeks. And I was like, oh, I really should at least put it. Somebody's playing actually. Then luckily it turned out for the best for me.
Yeah. You got real lucky, dude.
I did. I really did. Hey, you know what? 1-1. You beat me earlier in the year. I beat you.
100%. It's so funny because we have a chat that's for our like entire football fantasy team and like league, and I'm not active in it at all. It like I legitimately I pop in from time to time, like kind of scan it, and then I'd leave. I never really do anything. But when I beat you, I had made that meme, and it was like, "Tell PLD it was. I want him to know it was me." Right. And everyone was like, "Oh my god, PJ's around!" And they were like, "He comes in, murders someone, and disappears again for months."
I kind of almost forget. I know you're in the league. I kind of forget you're in that chat because like all of a sudden I just won't see you for months on end, and all of a sudden, boom. Somehow Mike Deacon brought you back from the grave. You got to trash talk a little bit, and then you got what you deserve when you trash talk.
So. Well, to be fair, the only other time I'm in there is to tell Jacob Blunden that he's wrong, like all the time.
That's true. That is probably it's like football, and then telling Jacob he's wrong on some movie.
That's all that chat is about. He has horrendous movie takes. And I'm just going to throw that out there live on air. He has horrendous movie takes.
I mean, he probably doesn't listen to us anyway, so he won't know. But if you are listening, Jacob, you are generally wrong. That's okay.
Yeah, dude, he was trying to call me crazy for thinking Dial of Destiny is my second favorite indie movie the other night. And I was like, brother, I will cut you. Like, this is... I'm not going to get into it. You guys can go listen to our podcast about Dial of Destiny if you really want to. But I have my reasons, and they're all valid.
Absolutely. And I'm right up there with you. I don't know if I can say it's my second favorite. But
yeah, I think it's like your third, honestly. And I'm okay. I don't know what it is. I just keep revisiting it. And it's so interesting. So you guys always see, I've always got like new things over here, like hanging out. But I'm playing the new Indiana Jones game. Yep. Right here. The Great Circle. And I'm having such a great time, but I found something super fascinating about it. It really ties into the themes that you and I talk about all the time.
Oh, interesting.
In Dial of Destiny.
Right.
Because there's a moment in the game, I don't want to, like, it's not really a spoiler, but there's a confrontation that Indy has with another character in the game. And the character starts to talk about the stuff with Marion. And he was like, why did you run away from her? Was it because you're not ready to be a husband? Or was it you're not ready to be a father? Ooh. Or did you not want to become your father? And it's a lot of the stuff that we've talked about that, of course, this is set after Raiders of the Lost Ark and before Last Crusade. But like so much of that and what happens in Last Crusade is the stuff that is like so heavily dealt with in Crystal Skull and Dial of Destiny. So it really kind of brings so much more of that forward for me. And I'm really impressed by that.
That's awesome, man. I wish I could. We talked about this a little bit beforehand. I just don't game anymore. I can't commit my time to it. I would get lost in it. I just don't have the time to get lost in it. And so just for Just for my own sake, I can't do it. But every once in a while, a game comes along, and I'm like, I wish I could. I wish I could find a way to do it.
Yeah.
Someday I will. Someday maybe I will. But at least I'll definitely want to watch the cutscenes for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm impressed, and so, anyway, it made me love Dial more, and it actually made me love Mangold more, because Mangold
Uh,
just really understood what he was doing, and I love that. It just makes me so happy, and I just know because we both were talking about it yesterday. There was an interview with James Mangold because he's out doing, the publicity stuff for his new one,
yeah,
the Bob
no.
Dylan biopic, and he was talking about Dial of Destiny and how hurt he was by the film's reception and all of that. And I think it's safe to say that ultimately that movie is going to find its audience in the end. I
I
think like Crystal Skull did too. Um, and I really contend that the more people revisit those movies, the more that they realize, oh, they are within the like same frame of the first three.
Yeah, I think especially Dial of Destiny will find its audience for sure because I feel like
Yeah.
people are going to grow into it. He even said it before. I mean, he said it during the interview. He was talking about how we think that he thought anyway that people just weren't ready for an 80-year-old indie and just waiting for like, an 80-year-old indie being an 80-year-old indie instead of
Yep.
being like an action hero again. And it wasn't the kind of movie he was trying to make. And he had Harrison Ford. He wanted to work with Harrison Ford doing indie at 80. And that's exactly what he did. And I guess
Hmm.
in a way, I understand why people are hesitant because I mean, you don't want to see your hero's age. You want to that's a childhood hero of yours. You want to see him like how you remember him back in the day, the big adventurous punching Nazis in the face while he's kicking ass and everything else. He's not quite that guy anymore, and that's makes it in a way it's a better thing because it's definitely a different thing and something we all
Hmm.
got to face eventually. So it's something I think once you get past that, you get past that like I want to have the fun adventure thing. You can get so much out of that film
Yeah.
if you allow yourself to.
Well, I mean, and honestly, that's the thing that you and I talk about a lot on here, and I will preach it as always, is that's the importance of taking everything as it is,
Yeah,
not as you want it to be. It doesn't matter if it's indie, it doesn't matter if it's like a TV show. Anything that you have like an affinity for, you have to take them as it is, not
yeah.
as you want them to be. It doesn't mean that you have to like everything. I mean, there's
Oh,
plenty of good, bad, or otherwise. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of Mando season 3, but it's not because I wanted it to be something else. I just thought it was kind of wonky.
scatterbrained. Yeah.
Yeah. The story didn't really come together for me, but like that's okay. It happens.
Mhm.
I
I
can look past that stuff as long as I take it as is versus telling it needs to be a thing that it's not trying to be.
and you know what? Also, exactly. My main point is if you prefer your indie from the Last Crusade days and all this kind of thing, I get it. And that's what
Yeah,
you want to
sure.
watch. Absolutely. And maybe this movie isn't going to be for you. If you don't want to take it in as it is, that's your choice, and I don't blame you for it. To be honest with you, but at the same time, some of the comments were very detrimental, and they're very like denigrating for what it is. It wasn't trying to be the kind of movie you wanted it to be. And so as long as you understand that and you kind of go, okay, I just don't want my 80-year-old to be fine. It's okay.
Fine enough. Like, yeah, fair enough.
Got it.
I don't agree with you, but
I don't
like,
either. Right.
yeah, like, look, it is what it is. But I'm
Absolutely.
never gonna tell people, especially nowadays. I really don't delve into the I feel like people are wrong unless you're Jacob, like we were talking about earlier. So, I really try to lean on the like, I just wanna enjoy the things that I'm talking about a lot of the time,
Yeah.
and it's the same thing of instead of doing, "Man, I can't believe you've never seen that thing." I do "Man, I'm really excited for you to experience that for the
Get to
first time."
experience that. Oh my God, that's great. That's
Yeah.
why we kind of maybe here on our podcast here, we try to watch, be positive about our movies. We like talking about things we love rather than like raging on things we don't like. Not to say we don't rage, because obviously when you pick a franchise, we do complete franchises on here. There's going to be entries that we're not fans of, and we'll be honest about it and let it rip as it is. But we much prefer talking about the
Yeah.
things we love and geek out about. Because
It's
why not? That's what you do.
it's so true. It's so funny. I get people all the time who listen to our podcast and they'll like come in, especially at the bar. And I've got a couple of people at the bar who listen to us too, and they'll be like, "Man, I just got to this one episode and I was like, I know exactly where you're going, and they'll be talking about they've been listening to our Conjuring stuff.
Right,
And
right.
they were like, I have never heard you angrier talking about a movie than when it comes to the OG Annabelle. And I guess that movie just like something about that movie, man, it just makes me viscerally angry.
Hmm, hmm. It's
It,
kind of funny. If we ever did the Alien franchise, which I think we might probably will get to at some point,
we've talked
um,
about it. I
we talked
mean,
about it. Yeah,
actually, before you get into that, in this conversation, as we're talking about it, we've talked about this before privately, but if we were to do Alien and Predator, do you guys want us to do it as like Alien all the way through and then Predator all the way through? Do you want us to do Alien Predator like chronologically, including the AVP films in the middle? Let us know. I
yeah,
want to know what you guys think because,
yeah.
for us, like when we put this stuff together, it's fun, but like, how do you guys want us to cover it? Because, with Freddy versus Jason, we've already covered that. Funny
Right,
enough, because we did Friday the 13th.
right.
We could have just done this all kind of like release
Yeah.
chronologically leading into up to it, but we didn't do that. So if you guys have an idea of like how you want us to handle that, let us know because I'm curious.
Yeah, I am definitely too, because it's something I'm open and doing for sure. Because I know the Predator franchise is another one we'd probably want to do at some point anyway as well. So doing it in a way where we just do whatever chronologically came out, especially because there are those Alien vs Predator movies that tie it together. I'd love to kind of handle that, and maybe we'll do it that way because then it's also kind of get a
Yeah.
nice breath of fresh air between them sometimes. It kind of works. It's kind of nice to kind of jump in and out of franchises. Now, why I had brought up Alien before is that the other show that I had done on this channel, Class Action, which, by the way, we're doing a very special live version of it this month. I believe December 18th is what we're going with here. Um, it's a show where I put up two things against each other, two movies against each other. We do like an Alien tournament, and Alien Resurrection was one of those movies that brought it out in me
Yep.
because I just really have a hard time with that movie particularly. That's one of those ones like I think Maddie made a clip about it and sent it out everywhere. Me just like getting very angry
Yeah.
about certain things. So we do negative things at times. We don't like to do it, but I understand why they can be entertaining. We at least try to be entertaining with it, if nothing else. But we always
Yeah.
want to go back and say, even if we don't like a movie that you liked, we always respect you guys liking whatever you like. If you like something we don't, hey, that's great. If I don't, I can maybe not understand it. I don't understand, get it, but like
Yeah.
I'm happy for you because at the end of the day, movies are about watching what you love, and if you love something and something connects and speaks to you, awesome, awesome.
I'm all about embracing the stuff you like. I mean, we joke about it all the time on here about me trying to get Paul to put Puppet Master on the roster because I just think it'd be so funny. But like, legitimately, I like a lot of those movies.
Yeah,
Most of them are terrible. Like, I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But like, I have such a fun time watching most of them
right.
because what's not to like about puppets running around clipping Nazis and stuff? I really have an affinity for watching Nazis get like offed.
Well, the way you put it that way always sounds much more appetizing. And I
I
will
know.
say, you know what? I'll come clean right now here. Definitely, it's I over exaggerate a little bit of my
Well, right,
not
because
liking
we
it.
do it for entertainment.
It's a bit. It's a fun bit. I actually like the first Puppet Master. I just have a hard time thinking going. I'm going to sit through 12 of these or whatever. I don't know how many there are.
Yeah, I think there's like 15 now.
You
I
know,
I
it's
feel
like,
like
oh,
after the first 5 until you get to like the reboot from a few years ago, they're
right.
really not very good. Although in the latest set of them, funny enough, they did like a trilogy that's all set in occupied Germany and it's all the puppets going after the Nazis.
That's
It's
so
kind of
funny.
incredible.
I will say the only way I can see us doing it, like is be like the way we do things, obviously, we are mostly biweekly, but like a lot of times like we have scheduled things that come up. And so we're not as consistent as I would love to be. We do our best. But if
We're
we
also
try,
two very busy human beings.
absolutely, absolutely. But if we try to do 15 movies in a row, like that's going to be that might take us more than a year to go through. So what I would consider throwing out there for you, and I'll put it out there, we could do Puppet Master like in spurts of one each. Like every once in a while we'll do it. Like we'll get to all 15 of them, but like it'll be an in between thing. Like we'll do a franchise, Puppet Master 1, another franchise, Puppet Master 2, kind of thing. Maybe that's what a long term kind of
Yeah.
wraparound, or something like
Yeah.
that. I can see doing that. Because I know you want to do them. I know you do it. I think it'd be fun to
I honestly I do, but I don't. because
Yeah.
in the same way, I feel like I don't want our podcast to implode under the weight of doing the Puppet Master movies.
I could definitely, honestly, I would definitely see us doing if we every once in a while. Sometimes when we don't do franchises. Sometimes we do these like films, like-minded films, like one-offs or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe we could do the original Puppet Master in one of those kind of thing potentially. I would absolutely do something like that for
Yeah.
sure.
It's honestly funny because I feel like the first 3 are actually really good, and then pretty much after that, it starts to do the, like, dip,
Yeah.
and then it heavy dips,
Right, right, right.
and it never really quite recovers, but that's okay. Like, they're still fun to watch,
Yeah,
and that is what it is. But I will say, talking about us being so optimistic and so hopeful, we're actually doing this on a Monday night, weirdly enough. We don't normally do these at night. And normally news hasn't broken in a way that seems so bizarre.
right.
Chris Evans is coming back for Avengers Doomsday, and I could not be angrier or more frustrated by an announcement. And since the Russo brothers were coming back to direct Avengers
Right,
Doomsday,
right.
um, boy, howdy, am I just like getting, and this is coming from someone who I literally have the 4K of Hawkeye sitting next to me right now because I picked it up this week. I like the MCU a lot. I mean, I own all the movies, I own the TV shows that they've released. Everything about the new Avengers movies, from the Russo brothers returning to Downey Jr. as Doom to this, fills me with dread and uncertainty.
I will say it's kind of funny. We're both known for being pretty positive overall. There are times where you are more positive on things, and there's times that
Oh
I'm more
yeah.
positive on things. And I'm probably more positive on this than you are, although I'm not very positive. Like, we both agreed heavily on the Russo brothers coming back. I did not want the Russo brothers to come back at all.
I
Um,
still want them to get fired before it starts, to be
which isn't
honest
going
with
to
you.
happen. Which isn't
It's
going to
never gonna
happen.
happen, but I can dream.
Right. RDJ, the announcement RDJ is coming back as
Well, he's playing Doom.
Doom. Okay. I didn't love that, but at least it's something different, I
And I
guess.
was a little more positive on that,
You
I
were.
feel like.
Evans coming back felt inevitable to a degree, and I guess I wanna wait and see what they're doing with it. I know the variant thing is getting old now, but this is like the ending of the multiverse saga kind of stuff with that going in. So it's a variant. I just don't want him to be Cap. I
But
don't
the
want him to be
problem I agree, but the problem is they already blew their load with him being a
Yeah.
variant. So
Yeah.
you
No,
can't
absolutely.
do that again. Like,
Right.
spoiler alert for Wolverine and Deadpool is that Cap, like, they allude to the idea that he is Cap when he first shows up. Of course, he is revealed to be the Human Torch.
Right. Right.
But now that we've done that, you can't put that genie back in the bottle. It's done. It's over. You did that joke. So if you're going to do this now, he can really only be Cap. And, like, yeah, sure, I guess you could make him a Steve Rogers variant, but
Right. The Hydra
again,
Cap,
you've already
Hydra
did
Cap
that.
kind of thing. I get it. Yeah. I just think like at this point, I'm looking at it like just during the same press leaking tour, or not leaking, but they're kind of like it's not like official announcements. They're all like kind of
Well, this came from the rap. Like, this is official.
okay. Well, I know they also mentioned that like Anthony Mackie is going to be Captain America in this film. So, like, what does that mean? Like, are there two? Are they
I
just going to say Cap, Cap? They're going to call each other, hey, Cap. We're going to go Cap. Hey, Cap. Which Cap? You Cap? I no, you Cap.
I kind of wouldn't be shocked if he's playing like Nomad instead, because they kind of had him be Nomad as it was in Infinity War. I straight up think they're gonna pull him out of time. I think they're
Mm,
gonna undo their ending to Endgame, and I'm really worried because it seems like the kind of thing that they would do at this point,
yeah.
specifically for putting butts in seats. And I think that they realize that, like, they really don't have an Avengers team right now.
They're
And
chasing that high. They're chasing the high, which they
mm,
can never get again. I don't think there's any way to make that such an organic thing that you can't duplicate it.
right,
And they're scared. They're running scared because they've had some
100%.
failures.
And so
So,
that's why my worry is that they're actually gonna do it this way,
mhm.
and it's not the way that I wanted this stuff to go.
And I will say, you
The
know what? I'm going to say something a hot take here. It's our fault. And I
It
mean
is
ours and the people's fault because quite frankly, people bitch and complain all the time about like we need new stuff. We want new things. We want new blah 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 blah. And yet you don't show up when they're new things or you get tired or you start bitching about it not being as good, yada yada yada. And that makes studios go, oh, Well, we need to bring back what works. It's the same thing as Star Wars. They're running on
Yep.
nostalgia because if the Skywalkers aren't involved, it's not as successful, not nearly as successful. Hell, I heard that I read today the Skeleton Crew, it's not doing wonderfully viewership wise. It's doing great critically and doing great with the audience. I'm hoping it's going to build back up. I'm hoping,
Yeah.
but like the viewership's not quite there, and
Well,
because that's why they're going to go back. Well, gotta have a Skywalker in it.
well, not just that. I mean, to your point, it's that and also the lack of foresight from a lot of these studios, and in this one particular, Disney, because I can point both the Star Wars and the Marvel thing falls directly on the hands of Disney.
Mhm.
And a lot of that is because they went so far in on streaming, forcing a bunch of shows that weren't ready. And the thing about streaming in general is that this stuff is never ready and
Right.
has a hard time like finding its audience.
Yeah.
And you can't really make money off of streaming. The fact that these shows aren't airing also on network television, they're
Right.
not generating revenue, they're not doing any of that, and then you're also forcing a like Marvel who tried to pump the brakes on the shows and like you can see it in most of the shows
Yeah.
that
100%.
they were undercooked and they weren't ready to go.
Undercooked and overpriced.
Right.
Like, they're
And so
throwing
you
these, like, hundreds of millions of dollars into these things, and it's like, well, of course you're not gonna make that back. Like,
whereas like Agatha was made for like 40, I think. It was the
yeah,
lowest MCU show like budget wise.
yeah,
And thankfully good because like it was a good show and that's actually more reasonable compared to some of the other stuff.
right. I'm hoping Skeleton Crew was lower too for that reason, because I would love, like, right now, I've only seen the first 2 episodes of Skeleton Crew. Absolutely loved it, and I kinda hope,
Same.
I know John Watts has come out and said they have ideas of where they could go to season 2 if it went that far. But I'm hoping it's cheap enough that they are getting enough out of it that they can kinda push it forward, especially if the audience builds. It's kinda like Andor. Andor builds didn't have actually, Andor never had, people never talk about this
It
or
actually had
ever talk about it.
terrible
Terrible
viewership.
views, but it's kinda went up a little bit, kinda maintained at least and stayed as it was, and it had great word of mouth. I'm actually expecting season 2 to be higher viewed. I think
I
the word of
don't
mouth is
disagree
bad.
at all.
So
And
I'm hoping the same thing happens to Skeleton Crew. That's my hope.
I'm actually hoping too that the lack of Star Wars next year actually helps them too.
Just a little bit. Yeah.
I do worry though because I think that there's going to be a hard recovery period for a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
There is something about the you know distance makes the heart grow fonder and all of that. There is going to come a time that they're gonna have to put the toys back in the box for a little bit. Like they're gonna need to rest because they just cannot sustain with how things are going right now.
Yeah. And they're
Um,
definitely trying to course correct it. I think it takes a while to course correct. That's the problem, because they announced like these course corrections, but like they already had so much like already shot or already
yeah,
ready to go that they couldn't like just like, well, it's out there. We got to put it out. Now it's like, okay, well, now what are we gonna do? We already are seeing like next year we only have Andor is the only thing from Star Wars that's announced. Well, Vision season 3, but that's kind of an outlier. There might be another. I would be surprised if there wasn't like another animated project for Star Wars next year at some point.
yeah.
But the live action, all we're getting is Andor. That's it, and then it's Mando and Grogu the film next year.
No, isn't that? Is that?
2026.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's 2026.
That's what I
So like
mean.
that's yeah, yeah. Yeah. Oh, got it.
Andor,
Okay,
then
I
2026 is
understood.
that. And maybe Ahsoka season 2 at that point. I know Ahsoka season 2 is filming next
Okay,
summer, I believe.
and
So,
that's the other thing. Studios, get your shit together. If you're
mm,
gonna do a TV show, and you know that you're probably gonna do another season, have
mhm,
that son of a bitch written before you even do the renewal. Because the fact that we're gonna wait almost 3 years between seasons for Ahsoka is garbage. And I'm not saying that as a fan. I'm saying that as someone who watches television.
yeah, no,
Like
absolutely.
waiting 3 years between seasons is fucking dog shit.
Because we're doing
Get it
they're
together.
they're doing this whole like, well, we're gonna see how it goes, and then we'll see if we want. And they hem and haw, and they hem and haw. They go, okay, we'll do it. And then it's like, well, okay, now we got to figure it all out. Like, I had such a breath of fresh air. I saw the trailer for Reacher season 3. All right, I'm
Yeah.
like, wow, Reacher season 2 just seemed like it just happened. That's how
And
TV used to
season
be.
4 has already been greenlit.
Yes, and that's how it used to be. Be like, okay, boom, season 2 hits. Next year is gonna be season 3. And it's like that's how you keep the momentum going at that point. But
I can't believe that this is a conversation that we're here having in the year of our Lord and Savior Cthulhu in 2024.
mhm,
Like, what the hell is happening?
I
And
know.
honestly, Dave Filoni, stop being a gatekeeper to your character that you created and let other people into the writer's room right while you're at it, because that's only slowing it down.
Yeah, I
Like,
100%
it
agree with that.
it really is. This whole thing could be avoided if they actually just stopped being so weird about all this stuff. Put your shows on networks, like, shop them around, put commercials in them, do the stuff that's gonna make them money instead of making this stuff for insane amounts of money and then being shocked when your streaming service isn't taking off and the shows don't have the viewership and you're not making money off of it.
Right.
Like, there's plenty of things you could be doing that you're just not.
Well, the problem I have right now, honestly, the last thing I heard is that Disney Plus actually did start growing and has increased in subscribers. So what are they proving to themselves? That they're doing it okay. Everything's
Well,
okay.
yeah, but that's the shows themselves don't generate money
I
really.
know,
You
I
know what
know,
I
but
mean?
I know that's what I'm saying, though. What I'm saying they're because their
Oh,
main
yeah,
goal
yeah.
is to get subscribers, so why would they change?
No, no, sure. But then they're confused when they spend that much money and they don't
Yeah,
understand also, and that's what I mean. Like,
I know.
it's the same thing with, like, Netflix. You're spending $200 million on half your movies. What are you
Mhm.
doing? You're a streaming service. You don't put things in theaters, so how are you actually gonna make money off of it?
It's still this weird world out there. I don't know.
It
Feels
is a
like
weird world.
streaming is like still they're trying
A
to figure out
disease.
exactly how it works. I like the idea of streaming services. I love them, to be honest with you, but they got to find a way to make it work better for them and for us.
Streaming services are a great tool. They are not great to be, like, the forefront of the thing you're doing.
Yep.
The thing that we're going back to cable because there's so many streaming services, and it's just a reminder that cable was the way to do it because at least you get ad revenue in doing that.
Right. Absolutely, absolutely. Well, it's funny. Most of the things are getting ads nowadays anyway. They're getting higher subscription prices. They're getting ads anyway. So they're learning that, and we are going more and more back to cable, pretty much.
Right.
But
So, anyways, get it together. God damn it. Just like in 1988, the writers' strike almost curbed A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The
oh,
Dream Master.
is that what we're talking about today?
Apparently, yes, now.
Yes.
We're getting back on the train, as it were, because, we talked about this last week. In 1987, this little movie called Dream Warriors came out, and it was super successful, and even though it was meant to be the final film, what happens with a horror movie when it makes a lot of money?
A sequel gets made. That's
A
just
sequel gets made.
it's
It just happens. So the Dream Master, as it were, was born. A film directed by many people, including Renny Harlin. He is the one with his name on it, but it is a film directed by many people
yes.
because there were 2 or 3 second units that were already shooting things before Harlan was actually even hired,
They were already shooting the film and they had no director.
and they
What?
didn't really have a script either.
I know. This whole film is so bizarre. The story of it coming together. I mean, Wes Craven had an idea for Nightmare 4, and they said, not going to go your route this time, Wes. Big mistake. First mistake, first of all. Like this is the guy who came back for 3 and delivered an awesome story that was well received.
And then
Instead,
they tried to go back to him while they were making it and
for
asked him
rewrites.
to try to rewrite it.
To rewrite the script that not his script, to rewrite a script that they chose. What a man, I mean, it was ridiculous. I mean, the funny thing is, like, Risher, one of the producers there, said that he approached Wes for an idea of the fourth film. I was with Wes each time. His idea was illogical. It was about time travel within dreams that broke all the rules of dreams. We decided not to go with that. We decided to go with the Dream Master idea instead. I I don't know. I don't know.
I
Um,
I am baffled because for all intents and purposes, here's a weird thing. The poster for this movie lives rent free in my mind because the grocery store in my hometown had a video section once
mm,
upon a time before the Hollywood Video in our, like, shopping center opened,
mm.
and they had posters for movies, and this one was in there. I don't know why this was the one that they chose, but it was there, and it lives rent free in my head because I saw it so frequently in my childhood.
Yeah, this is what I saw a lot too, to
But
be honest with you.
everything about this movie and its production tells me it should be the worst movie of all time.
And spoiler
And
alert,
yet,
it's not. It's not.
yeah, shockingly enough, it's not, but it also has every telltale sign of it shouldn't work, and yet
Mm.
it's way more watchable than it should be. It
Yes.
reminds me of another film in another franchise that's very popular called Quantum of Solace. Also
Mm.
made during a writer's strike, also had a lot of problems about finding its own directors and where it was going, and yet much more watchable than it gets credit for.
Absolutely.
This film runs into its biggest problem, which is that for the first half of the movie, it is a greatest hits of every Nightmare movie before that. And here's the thing, there's only 3 of them.
Yeah.
And only 2 of them are the ones that people wanted to talk about, really, at
That's
this
fair.
point in time. So we get a lot of very similar sequences to movies that you recognize with characters that you kind of know until we kill them all off
Yep.
and finally move in a new direction.
Uh, and we get a lot of Freddy in this one. We actually mentioned there's a lot of Freddy in this one. Like, and it makes sense
Too
because,
much Freddy.
which is something I don't like saying, but you're right. Because Freddy always works a little bit better when he's got these micro bursts of action, like these big moments. He comes in, chooses scenery, owns it up, and then leaves for a while, and is a scary demon that's a presence more than actually there. Um, but it's kind of the thing that gets me about this movie is that this is what you mentioned before about it being greatest hits. That's because it shot the way it shot. Like they
Yeah.
didn't have a script. They was like, well, I can come up with a kill sequence. I can get Freddy to riff. I'm sure Robert Englund probably was able to just like improv a few lines here and there. And they just, all right, we'll work that. We'll work that. We'll do that until we get a director. Did you know, by the way, one of the reasons I was actually upset by this, I'm not a big Renny Harlin fan. I mean, he's got
Yeah.
some whatever. He's whatever. They almost gave
He has cliffhanger, and that's pretty much it.
Isn't he Deep Blue Sea also?
Oh yeah, I do like Deep Blue Sea.
I have a guilty pleasure of that, but it's not very. But it's not good. It's not a good movie.
No. I would never ever call that movie good.
But I was really sad when I heard that they had offered it to Tom McLaughlin, who had just finished Jason Lives, Part 6 of Friday the 13th, which is
The best Jason movie.
many people's favorite Jason movie of all time, yours included. Yeah, and it's up there in mine. I still have that nostalgic bit for 7, but I definitely
for
can see
sure.
that 6 is right up there and a very well done crafted film. And Tom wanted to do it. He was offered Nightmare and he said, I would love Freddy. I would love to do one of these, but he wanted to have creative control. And they're like, we're already shooting. What?
Yeah.
He's like, well, that's not going to be good. So he left. We could have had a Wes Craven idea, a Tom McLaughlin directed film.
We were robbed.
What we could have had in this film.
Instead, we got the MTV nightmare of the franchise, as it's been coined over the years.
And that is a very apt description because that's what it was made for the MTV audience. It's made for that generation, and it fits into that very well.
It totally does. And here's the thing, like, it was so funny because we were texting a lot more during this one than we normally do.
Right.
Because you were like, "Hey, are you watching it?" Because again, we're doing this on a day that we don't normally do it. We were just trying to get everything together, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm watching it. I'm not really enjoying myself, but I'm watching it." Because for the first portion of this movie, like it has sparks of brilliance, but the problem is that like everything is so familiar in the wrong way, and it's just reminding you of better movies.
Yeah.
And like I just wish that they hadn't felt the need to do it the way they did, where they're also doing it with characters that we already knew. Because I think it would be a lot less egregious if I wasn't looking at characters I knew being offed in sequences that I recognize from other movies that are better. And there's something weird about doing that. Like Joey getting killed on a bed in a much less interesting way than the Johnny Depp murder in the original is such a weird choice.
It's a sanitized version too. It's like that's what it is.
Right.
Like, blood, it's water instead. What? In fact, there's not as much blood in this film at all, comparatively. No. In fact, I thought it broke some of the rules. I mean, I'm not a stickler for obviously continuity happens and horror films break their own rules all the time. But I found it like a little confusing at times. And like in the original film, and like most of the films, like Freddy did something to you in your dreams. It happened in real life. So you get cut. It comes back in real life. Hell, in this film alone, it happens when Jason, I love the name of the dog. Kincaid's dog is named Jason. That's definitely a nod, obviously. Bites Kristen. She comes out with a bloody arm. And yet, when Freddy stabs Kincaid, when Freddy stabs Joey, when they're come awake, they're just dead. There's no
Yeah.
there's no blood there. There's no stab wound. It's you're breaking your own set rules, which is just kind of strange. Is it
Mhm.
the end of the world? No, but it's an odd choice.
It's a super odd choice, and honestly, the other thing that's really weird is having an entire sequence set in the same car junkyard
Mhm.
as the film we just had,
Yeah.
and it's, like, especially because we just watched them so close together for this, it's a little weird in the why am I reliving this already sort of
Right.
way? Not in a way that, like, they're just using footage, like, every Friday the 13th has previously on, and we
Right.
joke about that a lot. Like, it is what it is, but you just kinda come to terms with it. But here, because of everything going on around this movie, they were just like, "What sets do we have available? Go
That
back
works.
to the one that from that movie again."
Right.
What?
Right. It's because that's where his bones were. So in a way, like you can justify it, right? You can justify and say, okay, Freddy's bones are there. If he's going to reanimate, you got to go back to the junkyard. And it was a great scene, but it does seem stale. It's like, okay, we've already
Yes.
done this. We've been there. We've done this. Um, and honestly, although even though I would say that, even though it's stale, it's still one of the better sequences, and that's because Kincaid's in it.
Right,
Um,
because Kincaid is a great character.
and I gotta say, like, let's you know what? Let's like rip the bandit off here right now. Obviously, this film makes the choice. We bring back our three surviving Dream Warriors, which are Kincaid, Joey, and Kristen, and they choose to kill them off in the first 20 minutes, all three of them, which not only cheapens Nightmare on Elm Street 3, which not only cheapens the idea of the connectivity of a story, it just robs you of characters that you know and love, and makes you get introduced to even a new set of characters that you're supposed to fall for and get motivated by, so that you care when they die, and you have and amazingly enough, despite this working against it, the characters for the most part, new characters are good. They are
Yeah.
fun and decent characters, but it just seems like you're handicapping yourself. It's like they had the idea in their head, okay, Kristen was the last of the Elm Street. We have to find a way to get Freddy to go to the next beat. And instead of like having her bring people in and just like joining their squad together, it was like we have to totally separate them. And that was like the idea in their head. And like I can understand theoretically how it could happen if you write that down, but somebody should have looked at that and said, we're getting rid of some fun characters. Now, honestly, Joey could have died. I'm okay with one of them dying. Joey's the one
But
who did.
all 3 of them,
All
look,
three of them.
it's one of the it it's really hard because, like, on the one hand, I'm all about changing the stakes in a franchise. I'm all about doing stuff like this. But you're also not wrong that you're also very much kneecapping your own films by doing this in your own universe. And ultimately, the other thing is like once he kills Kristen, he the idea is that, well, now none of the kids from Elm Street are alive. The whole thing is over, and Freddy just wants to keep killing. And
Yeah.
it just kinda also undermines his character
Yeah. It
because
does.
now, like, this movie basically standardizes him into just a normal serial
Yeah.
killer.
Right.
And it like, look, ultimately at the end of the day, yes, obviously that's what we know what we're getting into with these. Like, obviously they're always going to find a reason to keep doing it.
Right.
But there's something about the fact that once they take that band-aid off and do that, it just kind of makes it feel not fun. And I guess what's interesting is that, like, it feels like once that happens, Freddy is having the time of his life because
Yeah.
now he's just murdering. And so I wonder if that plays into my frustration with the tip of the scale because Freddy is so much more present in this movie. And for
Mm.
me, he goes from Freddy Krueger to Freddy the Joker. And Freddy
Mm.
the Joker is fun a lot of the time until he's there for too long and you're like, "Okay, we've had a lot of this and why are you only cracking jokes and putting on sunglasses on the beach?" Like it really takes fun and takes it up to here. And sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad and the film doesn't find its balance.
I will say honestly, spoiler. This is gonna be a spoiler for Nightmare 5, even though I haven't rewatched it, so I could change. My mind could change, but I feel like it actually gets even worse next film.
Oh,
I think next film is
100%.
when he really becomes like. I honestly think there's a better balance here, although it's not nearly the perfect balance was 3. That was
Yes,
the perfect
100%.
balance, Freddy. There's still good balance here, but it is definitely slipping in the wrong direction. I'll give you that for sure. Um, But yeah, it just seems like what I was saying is like, all right, so Joey, I could see going because Joey being not mute actually just kind of kills the character, becomes kind of a bland character. So get rid of
Mhm.
him, fine. Kincaid was actually the life of the third film. Has such a spunk to him, has a creative juice to him. And acting him with some of these other characters would have been glorious because he had someone. He could have been a little bit older, a little more experienced guy who could kind of like teaching these kids a little bit more about Freddy. Could have worked out that way. And also, when it comes to Kristen, like for whatever reason, they decide that Kristen's not the end game anymore. We want to introduce this Alice character. And this is nothing against Alice because, quite frankly, despite
She's a
her
good
introduction,
character.
good character, good final girl. The actress is great. So, despite everything, this is like basically the summing up the film in general. That despite its best efforts, it still succeeded overall. I like her, but it just seems like in your head you're like, well, why couldn't Kristen just do what Alice did for the most part? Why did we need to switch up at that point? Like because they didn't want Kristen to like have two movies survive. Maybe they couldn't have Freddie miss out twice on her and have her live again. It seems like such a weird choice to make. We're gonna get rid of Kristen and bring in this girl. Bring in this girl. Maybe it might be because maybe they got mad at the character. Maybe they got irrationally mad at the character when Patricia Arquette doesn't come back. And instead, we get, and no offense to you, no offense to her. Maybe I'll say this the wrong way, but I'm sorry. It sounds like a porn name. Tuesday Night.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of not wrong. But
It's
it's weird, man. So it's funny because, one of the things I think about a lot is the Alien franchise, actually, funny enough.
mhm,
One of the biggest problems with Alien 3 is that it kills off Newton Hicks between movies.
mhm,
At least in this one, credit where credit's due, we do get the characters back. It doesn't happen off screen between films,
true.
but there still is something to be said about taking characters like that and killing them off. And I do think you're right that when you look at the Kincaid character, he would have so fit perfectly with the
Mhm,
rest of the cast. And now, granted, as weird as it sounds, they're not really thinking about this. They're going movie to movie, but
uh,
like in a different world, you would have looked at some of these characters and gone, which ones do we keep around so that we can use them later again? Because you do want to have more characters that you can lean on in a franchise like this. I know horror movie franchises are gonna tend to kill off the characters, obviously, like, that's a
right.
big part of what they are. I mean, the Scream franchise is famous for that.
Yeah.
But, like, there is a line.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, we had that moment. Obviously, just as Kincaid and Joey are kind of getting pissed at Kristen because she keeps bringing them into her dream because she keeps seeing Freddie or feeling Freddie's
Yeah,
there, and they're like, "God damn it, Kristen, we're done. It's not happening. He's dead. The boiler's cold." And they have a sequence, and the next day they come and they see her and they start talking to her, and then her boyfriend Rick shows up, and Kincaid and Rick like are on each other's nerves, and it's a great little exchange. And that could have continued the entire movie. That would have been fun. That would have been a fun
yeah,
ending.
yeah, and it's weird because, again, I actually like the Rick character. I like the Alice character. I do like a lot of the new,
Yeah.
like, blood, as it were, that was put into the franchise. But it comes at the cost of also undermining the last movie and those characters, and
Right.
it really bums me out, and I mean, we also have to talk about the obvious factor of the not having, um, Patricia Arquette come back, which
Right.
also does not really help the Kristen Parker of it all,
Yes.
because and again, no Tuesday Night seems like she's a fine actress.
Yeah.
She's not bad in this for her by any means, but there is something lost in translation a little bit in the
Mm.
fact that she didn't she's not Patricia Arquette. Now, granted, Patricia Arquette also chose not to come back. She wanted to focus on doing other things, and that's fair. But it also just kind of it hinders the movie a little bit.
It does. It really does, unfortunately. And I wonder, like, I just feel like that must have been part of the reason. They must have said, okay, we're not getting Patricia Arquette back. Let's make a new character because we don't want to like do this otherwise. But it doesn't make sense, though, unfortunately. It really doesn't make sense. And I think part of the problem also is you say two things you said. You said this undermines three. And that only matters because three was so successful and so well loved
Mhm.
and beloved. If you undermine two, like you did, like three just totally forgot two existed, nobody cared. Nobody really cared. It was like, okay, cool, we're back. That's the big difference. And then the other thing, I think 80s films, 80s horror films in general, kind of fell in love with their own icons, fell in love with the Freddy, the Jason, the Michael, and everything else that they figured that the other characters didn't matter. And what you're realizing like 20 years later, as we keep watching these films and we keep falling in love with the entire series instead of just the individual film, we love some of those other characters. We love the Tommy Jarvises. We love the
You're
Nancy's.
goddamn right we love the Tommy Jarvises of the world.
We love the Nancy Thompsons. We love, I mean, these are the characters we actually like. And so when they get to
Laurie
come back,
Strode.
Laurie Strode, exactly. We love these characters returning. And you are totally cutting yourself off by getting rid of all these characters. And nobody did that more so than Nightmare did. That's the thing. Like we had Nancy come back in 3 and Donald, of course, and Nancy's father also. But that's it. They're almost always
And guess what happens?
Yeah.
They're both killed off in that film.
Both killed off. Both killed off.
It's one of the things that I think is actually really unfortunate about this franchise in particular, because you're right. I think, and I feel that this franchise does that almost more than any other.
Yes, that's excellent. Yep.
And like, look, that's not to say like Friday the 13th does it too. But here's the thing. Friday built it in, weirdly enough as that sounds, by part 2. Like, you're accustomed to it, but then at the same time, a lot of the characters do live on. Tommy Jarvis lives on. Like, so many of those characters continue to live their lives. Halloween killed off Laurie only to bring her back.
Yeah.
And twice, mind you, because Halloween 4 kills her off screen.
Off screen. Yep.
Resurrection kills her on screen.
Yep. Absolutely. It's just they're really it's really hard it's hard to understand. I mean, maybe it's the fact that they were so close to the material and they were so close to they had a rush to get it out. They were just trying to get something on paper. And on paper, it's like, hey, Freddy's all we need. All we need is Freddy killing some teens. Magic. Go. And it really undercuts the series that way, unfortunately.
Well, and I blame, and this is, that 100% falls on Renny Harlin, because Renny Harlin has talked about it in press, in the press since. He's done interviews, and he decided that this was the movie when he was like, I'm going to make him the hero. Because he says that we reached the point where the audience sees Freddy as the hero. They come to see the movies to hear these funny lines and see him do these amazing things. And because of that popularity, I'm faced with showing Freddy in a more heroic light and giving him more screen time. People will still fear him, but they will also be cheering him on. And he's not wrong.
No,
but
not.
That is not you cannot handle this franchise in particular that way.
No, I agree. And most franchises, honestly, because it's the same thing that happens all the time. You get a supporting character in a movie, and everybody loves them. When they get their own movie, it's almost never as successful because you're messing with the magic of what got you there in the first place.
Yeah,
that's the problem. By over relying on Freddy, all of a sudden becomes the problem. Luckily for this film, it's not there yet. We see the cracks in the wall, but there's a lot. We said there's a lot of good mainly because of the characters. Like I like every character pretty much they introduced, except for maybe Dan. Dan, who is probably the blandest character in maybe the history of horror.
But Danny Hassel's good at least.
Yeah,
the character's boring, but he's fine. You know what I mean?
It's the material. Just kind of like he basically is archetype character A. He has no personality, really, honestly.
No.
But it's not like anything. But that's your worst character in the film. That says something. Like I really have a soft spot for Rick, even though. Yes. Is he a dime store Christian Slater? Absolutely.
Yes, 100%. Or Johnny Depp.
Or Johnny Depp. And probably meant to be. It's probably meant to be that way, obviously. This is right around time, pump up the volume, everything else. Okay, we can make this is what kids like. And he looks a little like him. But the actor playing is really good. He actually has some of the more memorable lines in the series.
And they actually improv'd a lot of it because they were going off script because there was no script. There was no script.
Like
in the same way, I was going to say, Toy Newkirk as Sheila. Sheila's a great character.
Yes. Killed off a little early, I think, in my eyes, but like she was.
Oh, way too early, but she's a great character.
Yeah, absolutely. And like they're all, the friendship group is there. Even though like you almost don't understand, you're like, you have the Christian Slater, like rebel kind of guy. You have like the top jock of the school. You have this like pumping iron kind of flirt girl, and then you have like the nerdy geek. Like, how did this group get together? But you don't care because it's fun and it works. They make it work because their chemistry is there.
But it is, but it's just mind-boggling
Yeah.
at times that some of the choices were made. But again, you also have to look at it like their backs were against the wall in a lot of putting this together. The studio could have also just as easily decided to wait until they were ready, but they
Mm,
didn't. So all that being equal, even though I think that fundamentally from jump the movie is not the best, once the movie gets going and you get into like the second half of the movie, after like the first 30 minutes, it really starts to find its footing. And even in spite of all of its flaws, in spite of all the things going on with it, it works.
yeah,
And it
it
works
does.
and it's fun. Like it's again, it's not great, but there's a lot of really interesting ideas. The movie theater sequence in The Dream is one of the most interesting sequences in the entirety of the franchise, just
100%.
visually speaking. I love this part of the movie. I love those things. There's a lot of the dream stuff that is actually elevated from the last movie to this one
Mhm.
because the as we talked about last week, Nightmare 3 is like the key that unlocks what everyone thinks the franchise is.
Right.
This movie, because of all the problems behind the scenes just getting there, it really lands because the dream sequence stuff becomes the front and center.
Right.
And so when it really takes off like that, boy, it works.
Mhm, mhm. And, like, even though, okay, they rejected Wes Craven's idea, and they went with the Dream Master
But hey,
idea.
don't worry. The Crave Inn where they work is in the movie. So
That's
Wes
right.
is still present.
But it's still present, absolutely. It does make a kind of logical continuation of you have the Dream Warriors, the Dream Master idea makes sense as a kind of continuation of what you're doing. And I like the fact that like we have Alice is basically Rogue from the X-Men. She basically takes everybody's powers in and becomes her own Uber mutant almost in a way, which is a great idea in a way. I do like that idea.
Yeah. It's a
Even
decent idea.
it is a different idea. Although I gotta say, it is a little weird. Again, should I criticize story in a horror movie, in the 80s horror movie? Maybe I shouldn't because it's like kind of one of those things, like especially it's rushed like this. But the idea is like, so
But that's also what we do here. So
it is what we do
deal
here.
with it.
Exactly. Kristen is the last of the Elm Street kids. Obviously, Joey goes out like a punk. Kincaid's sequence is fun. I will give, even though it's a junkyard thing, it is fun and it is good, solid Kincaid. And he even goes out saying, I'll see you in hell. Tell him Freddie sent you. Doesn't go out like a bitch. He goes out the way he should go out if he's going to go out. But Kristen is at that point the last Elm Street child, and Freddie wants to use her to access other children, other
Yep.
kids, or whatever. And so Kristen almost against her will, it feels like it does pull Alice into her dream. And then Freddie's like, okay, great, I have access to her now. But then Kristen gives her the power before she dies, gives her the power to bring people into her dreams, which goes against everything what you're trying to do. Like you don't
Also,
want to have that power because you don't want Freddie to have access to any more people at that point, right? Am I
Also,
wrong?
it kind no, you're not, and it also kind of paints Kristen in a bad light because she forces this on a character who is not asking for this power.
At
Like
all.
Alice is just a bystander who kind of gets drawn into the middle of this, and it kind of makes Kristen a bitch for doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. You're gonna need my power. What? No, you don't need. You need to like
Especially because she's not one of the Elm Street kids. As
right.
far as we're aware, the Elm Street kids are gone and done. Like that
Yeah,
was the point.
die
So
with me.
it's a weird choice, man. Like
Yeah,
this movie is full of shit like that. It
yeah.
it, it drives me bonkers
Yes.
because the dream sequences are so fun,
Hmm.
but for every fun sequence, there is a baffling choice like that.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's exactly what it is. And it's always in spite of, it still draws you in and still I still watch it with a smile. I still end up
Oh
enjoying
yeah.
it. And but it's like it's so weird these things happen. It's like, oh, okay, this is definitely a part of rushing. It's definitely part of improv without a script. This is definitely hey, we need to get something done. We need an idea. Okay, we'll just make that work. Who cares? As long as Freddy's killing kids, we're good. That's all I care about. Really, it's us. Good death scenes in there. Like Robert Englund gets a riff on things. That's what they care about. But yeah, it does throw me for a loop at times for sure.
It totally does, and it's like there are again, there's a great sequence in like the best nightmare sequence in the movie. Honestly, is actually set in the school, and again, this does feel like they're still pulling back on the original first film in
Hmm.
the sequence with Nancy when she's freaking
With
out in the
Tina.
classroom.
With Tina. Yep.
Yeah, but they kind of do it again here in its own way, and it's one of the better versions of doing the, like, remake of a thing that you recognize, if you
Right.
will, because it also plays on the fact that throughout the movie, they keep talking about the fact that poor Sheila has asthma,
Yep.
and it's actually one of the best sequences because it plays on a real fear
Right.
of what would happen if you actually had an asthma attack and what comes of that.
Right.
Scene is great because Freddy does something really mean and really vindictive in front of everyone in a way that is actually really unsettling.
And it actually what's great about that too is it does follow those rules and that like what I said before,
Yes,
the best Freddy deaths happen when they can be explained in other ways. That's the most terrifying thing. Like people don't believe that Freddy is there because she just had an asthma attack. They don't see Freddy sucking the air out of her. That's the way it
right.
works. Like going back to, and this is where it had good moments like that. But then going back to Joey, how does the mom explain that Joey ended up in the waterbed?
Yeah.
Like do they think that he somehow opened it up, filled it up with water, and zipped it up closed and like drowned? Like it made no sense to the storyline. It's such a like the thing. He should have
Well,
died
I
really
mean, in the
bad.
to your point, right? Honestly, one of the most baffling things also is Kristen's mother deciding to dose her and make her go to sleep because she needs rest after she knows everything that happened.
In 3, yep. My big
After
note on her,
everything.
Kristen's mom, still a bitch. Like,
Yeah, like, it's just I don't understand why you do that. Like, I honestly this movie would honestly be even better if Kristen's mom was a lot more involved and
right.
actually got, like, in on it.
A redemption arc, even a little bit of it. Not like maybe a full redemption arc, but like she understands what happened in 3, or at least tries to understand and knows
Yes.
that something happened. And
She
it's like,
should be the first death in the movie too.
yes, that would've been great. That would've been perfect. Absolutely, that brings her back. Instead, we get her, like, at most being like, "Oh, get away from the Freddy house." Like, okay, and then you're gonna dose your kid. Okay, wonderful.
Yeah. It's just such weird choices like that that, again, knowing everything going on behind the scenes, I have to imagine that just trying to put this together
Yeah.
e every movie that comes out is a miracle, and I
Mm,
don't mean that it means that they're good, but you have to remember the time and effort that goes into making a lot of this stuff,
yeah,
and a movie even getting in front of us is a miracle. So, this movie, for all its faults,
it's a miracle.
yeah, it's a miracle, and I have to also look at it that way, and that's really difficult for me because sometimes I just get frustrated,
Right. Yeah, and
and,
I do.
you know, it's also funny because this also features, like, one of the weirdness things, again, talking about Sheila, but they did have Toy go back and re-record her lines after that they made it because they wanted her to sound more black than she sounded when they filmed it. And that's one of those things where you go, I realize that everything in this movie was a production nightmare, but come on, guys, like, what are we doing? And again, baffling.
Baffling. Absolutely baffling. It's just a strange line at all. But there is, like we said, there are some great moments here. I like some of my favorite moments involve Rick. I think Rick's my favorite character, I think, honestly. I almost
I
wish he
believe
didn't
it.
die soon. Because he had a great line delivery. He tells Dan, because Dan, who, by the way, Dan seems to just get more attracted to Alice as she gets crazier and crazier, which,
It's true.
Dan, what are you doing, Dan? That's your kink.
Okay,
Okay.
but look, how many men have been in that position? Let's call it what it is. So
That's true. That's true.
that's just
That's
it's
fair.
what it is, man.
That's fair. But he has a great line when like because Dan comes to her after Alice like runs the school or whatever, and he's like, she's getting let this Freddy stuff really get to her. It's like kind of this fake thing, and he just turns and goes, man, maybe it's not a story. I mean, look, we're dropping like flies here. And it was like such a heartfelt, well delivered line that like I was like, I'm actually watching a movie here. Like, you don't see that in horror films very much. I really love that way he delivered that line. I don't
No,
Um,
it's a great line, and I love how involved he is with everything, and I like that he's not a character who's writing off
yes,
so much of what's going on. It was a real breath of fresh air to have characters around that weren't writing
right.
her off like crazy.
Like he does at the very beginning because he writes Kristen off until
Right.
she dies. But then he quickly does start getting involved and being like, "Hey, you know, there's something going on here." And you can tell that's less about writing her off and more about denial. Like he doesn't want to believe in this stuff. But then like he does get there and he's like, okay, there's something going on, man. There's something really happening here. What the hell are we gonna do?
Yeah,
Um,
it's great, and I love that. Similarly, I just really like Alice as a character, and I
mm,
really like her arc, and funny enough, I actually think she has the almost better version of the Kristen Parker,
mm,
where in a lot of ways she starts very similar. People kind of writing her off, people looking at her like she's crazy, but she really comes into her own and she becomes such a badass. And I
yeah,
really appreciate that the character really grows
yeah.
and continues forward. And like her little sequence at the end where she puts together her costume before she goes in for the nightmare
You saw
and like
the Stallone and Schwarzenegger montage.
yeah,
Like that's
the commando sequence as it were.
exactly
Um but using other people's like items of clothing and
right.
stuff. Like, I kinda loved that, and
I
it
did too.
really because it actually made all the characters feel like they mattered to each other,
Yes. Yeah,
and
and
that's
they
why
all
it's so
mattered.
good.
The group mattered, and that's exactly what it was. Her friends mattered to her, and her friends gave her strength, not only metaphorically, but literally because of her powers or whatever that she had.
Right.
The whole thing worked. I mean, even let me like excuse some minor like the bug zapper.
It's so yeah, and it's
it's
good.
it's stupid, but it works. That's like it just works. And I don't even know. I can't even say it. It works so well because that's what she clips it out at the end, and she even uses it at the end. It's like stupid as hell, but yet for some reason it works.
It totally does, and again, it really shouldn't, right? Like, in so
Oh
many ways, this movie shouldn't come together,
yes,
and yet, for every fault, I go, but look at the cast. Look at the people inside of it. Look at what's going on, and, like, it actually does weirdly come together for being such a hodgepodge of a film.
yeah, it does because it has great moments. That's the thing. It's got a lot of great moments that are connected by good characters, at least decent enough characters that you care about. They don't have to be like wonderful Oscar winning characters. Hell, you
No,
know,
God, no.
Debbie's not the greatest actress, but like,
Yeah.
and Dan's not the greatest actor, but they're characters that you gotta care about. You want to see what's going to happen, and you care when they die. I was rooting for Rick when Rick goes through. By the way, Rick's death sequence or his dream, which is spurred on by complete lack of budget. They couldn't
Yep.
do what they wanted to do. So they're like, well, we have no money left. What are we gonna do? I know. We'll have Freddy be invisible and whoop his ass at like some kind of kung fu karate sequence. Should be the worst thing, and like on paper, it's like so ridiculous, and
And it's
yet
not good. I'll say that.
it's not good. But I still loved it. I don't know why. I still thought it was fun and like silly as hell, but it
It's
still worked.
really it's really
Right.
silly. Uh, it's a your mileage may vary kind of silly because
100%.
I 100% hear you, and I actually get a kick out of it in a weird way too because it is so dumb,
Dumb. It's so dumb.
but it's like also the very obvious version of cost cutting in all the wrong ways.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Moon Knight, and I've made it known before. Like I was I know the Moon Knight character, I get the Moon Knight character, but by the last episode, when you do that one more time and you have that character black out and we miss an entire action beat, go fuck yourself. And that's kind of how I feel with this one, where it's like, guys, I wish you would have at least tried, And look, credit where credit's due. Andreas Jones goes for it.
And
Like
makes
that
it work.
dude, yeah, he gives a performance that honestly probably should have been Oscar nominated just for the fact that it exists.
And
It's so dumb and he commits to it.
100% commits to it. It actually makes me believe it's there. Actually, it almost for a bit makes me believe that this was intended. Almost, not quite, almost. But the fact that it gets close, that close to me, that's like almost award-worthy honor at that point. Uh, like I said, that between that and his funeral sequence when he comes back from the dead in
Yeah.
her vision, hello, baby. I loved it.
He's
I just want to see
yeah,
more of
that
him.
I really actually like that too. I think it's so interesting how many, funeral sequences there are.
Yes. Yes, quite a bit. Everything's
Yeah,
back well, it's part of cost cutting. We're gonna do all the funeral sequences now. Yeah,
yeah,
get them done. But it's actually a very touching moment because I like Rick and I like Alice at this point. I like their relationship. It's something you don't see as much in these horror films. It's a brother, sister, very protective, obviously the father. They lost their mother. I forget. I heard they said what was it cancer, it was a car crash. I don't remember what it was. But the father's kind of turned into an alcoholic. He's kind of lost himself. And so obviously
you
it's
know,
like them against the world. And they
it's
look out for each other, and it's shown. It's not only just said, it's shown, and they work that out. And so that sequence in the end when he wakes up and a little baby, even though it's her daydream or whatever it is, seeing that together is actually a very touching moment. Here he is coming back one more time. I'm never really gone, baby. I'm right there with you. Come on now, come on. We're all good. I got to go for now. I'm right there, and it
so
works.
it works, and 2 things to go off of what you just said. Number 1, when they're watching the tape back because, Rick obviously, was dating Kristen
Right?
as everything happened, and they're watching those home videos, and when Alice looks at him and goes, "You always made her so happy."
Yeah.
And he goes, "Yeah, until all that Freddy shit," and she goes, "But you still made her happy." Like,
Right.
that sequence is so great because, again, it's actually world building, and
Yes.
I like that because we do get to see a side also of Kristen that we didn't really get to see before, and
Right.
it's really nice. To that point, their father, when he confronts Alice and he's more sober than normal, and he goes, "I know what you're going through. I know what you're going through." Real missed opportunity.
Mm.
It should have been revealed that he was one of the Elm Street parents,
Yes, 100%, 100%.
because it also would have explained the alcoholism. It would have been the first, like, there was something there in that you could run with that, because it also would make sense why Kristen felt drawn to Alice,
Right,
why Alice was given the power, why
right.
Freddy becomes so focused on her. Like, all it had to be is that he was one of the parents at Elm Street and they left because he could not live with what he did.
Right, absolutely. That would've been I actually think that would have been great. That would've been awesome to do. Like, he coulda, like, he could've went to Elm Street, been one of the parents, his kid died, and and he marries, and he has more kids at that point.
Yeah,
And it's a reveal that he was involved in some case that actually makes absolute sense. And it's the world building there would have been phenomenally done. I agree. That's an idea that he really should have gone with.
it is, and it's funny because I know I preach this all the time. Movies should be the thing they are. Obviously, we were talking about it earlier,
Yeah.
not what you want them to be. But it's just one of those moments because with everything else we're talking about, they have such a great small bit of world building, and then it's like you didn't take it farther when you could
Could
have,
have
when it
gone.
was right there,
Could have
because
gone
you're
more.
really leaning on this dude's emotional trauma. He really should have been a night like, he should have been one of the parents on Elm Street,
Yeah.
and I'm never gonna really look past that. I can't unsee it because to me, it just makes too much sense.
Yeah.
So I'm headcanoning that he actually was aware.
That makes good to me. That's fine to me. I'll buy that. I'll buy that for $1. That's a great thing about headcanon. You can make anything you want happen, and it technically counts.
Yeah.
As long as it's not contradicted, and it's not contradicted, so we're good there.
Exactly, yeah, this is not, like, a thing that they clearly don't say within the movie and is contradicted, like, they just don't really lean on it in any way, and so that's why I'm like, "Huh,
And,
weird."
it would clear up everything I needed to it would clear up everything about bringing Allison and everything else. Just makes so much sense in the world why you wouldn't do that, I don't know. Because you don't need to have like, Kristen could still be the last of the Elm Street children. Like, Alice was conceived, or Rick and Alice were conceived after the fact, after this whole thing went down. It makes them not part of the Elm Street children, they're only kinda tangentially. But the fact that he was involved and they had a sibling pretend or a sibling or maybe half sibling or something, that would have made it work, even better for sure.
100%. So, anyway, if you have more thoughts about where that franchise shoulda gone and you wanna talk to someone about it, I'm on Blue
Good boy.
Sky. You know where to find me.
He's your boy right there. Absolutely. What else we got here? Got some other things in there. Okay, so Alice in the movies. Great sequence. We mentioned that like that before. I love the fact they got all the actors back to have them in the balcony. Even
Yeah.
back to Kincaid and Kristen, they're all there, which is great. I
Again,
love that
that
too.
sequence is fantastic, and I love that
Absolutely.
the black and white of it. I like just the feel of it. Um,
It's
this is
using
one of the
the
better ones.
dream. It's using the dream sequence to what it should be done. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's
Um,
also the one time that now I don't know if this was a Renny Harlin one. I have to assume it is, just because it feels like it's one that must have been done pretty far into filming.
mm,
So it's my guess. Uh, I could be wrong because it's also the one sequence where Freddy is not like super prominent,
yeah.
and yet obviously he's also controlling all of it,
Right.
and it's really really good, and it's really really unnerving.
Yes. Yes. It very much so is. And we followed up with the diner bit and the famous meatball scene, which is actually probably one of our famous scenes from this movie in the franchise. All the
Mhm.
different souls are meatballs on the pizza, or whatever. I like how that effect works. That effect actually works pretty well
Yeah.
for me. It's like it's that balance we talk about. Like it's a little silly, sure, it's a little silly, but it is still creepy as hell to say. It's that fine tuned thing going on.
Well, it's funny because, the other thing that they do a lot in this, they really focus on the children, like Freddy's children,
Yes.
by showing his body and showing the faces on them and stuff. And every time it's super effective. In this one in particular, the faces feel even more alive than normal, so
Yeah.
it actually makes that sequence that you're talking about more disturbing
Yes.
because you're also because you've already seen the faces screaming and crying on his body, and
Mm.
so then with the I don't know, something about it, it just kinda ties it all together for me, and it actually makes it really terrifying.
Absolutely is, and that's what works it out. Um, in fact, the ending you mentioned before, like they have the whole ending in the church where he opens his shirt and you see him coming out, and like it's a very like disturbing moment for sure. Like you see like the head really coming through Freddy's like almost like opaque skin at that point coming through, and you have the hand coming out of his head gripping onto the
Yeah.
back
There's
wall.
a little body horror in the, like, last 10 minutes of this movie, weirdly enough aimed at Freddy.
Yeah, which is strange, but I guess in a way it makes sense. If you're gonna do it, might as well do it to Friday in a way because it's probably easier to do. You already have the makeup on, everything else, bring instead of trying to bring somebody else in through all the makeup stuff, for sure. Um,
But,
other
actually, to your point, sorry, not to jump in on
no,
you,
go ahead.
the end of this movie's a little weird.
It is. It is. We can talk
It's a
about the ending.
little weird.
Let's talk about the ending. Yeah, it is kind of weird. From the commando sequence on, and then she jumps through the mirror and gets to the dreamland or whatever, and we end up in a church. After going through a carnival kind of thing. We mentioned the carnival last time. More carnival imagery here with the rolling hallway thing going on. But then we get to this church sequence, and it's basically Freddy versus Alice, and it's kind of like because Dan wakes up, Dan gets brought out of his hospital into the hospital, gets brought back to life, so to speak, and then it's Alice
Yep.
left alone. And the church, I like, is the first time we really see a church sequence in here. Because not very religious. Like you almost expected the church to be in the last film with the Amanda Kruger
Yeah,
doll and everything.
especially with I was gonna say with the nun of it all being his
Right.
mother.
That made sense. And here it just kind of almost feels tacked on. It's like, what are we doing here? I don't get what we're here for.
Well, and
Uh,
what about that really weird, strange, wonderful contraption of hers that blows a hole through Freddy?
it's a bug zapper. And
I know. I'm
it
aware of what it is.
I know it's like that's what I'm saying. It's like the bug. That's what I mean. It's a dream, so maybe in the dream it's more powerful. I guess. I guess it's supposed to be the metaphor that it's like she's building up her powers, and that was her power, and the power of friendship can beat. It's almost like a Care Bear thing. The power of friendship can defeat the evil demon. But it is very very strange for sure.
It's just it's such a bizarre choice. Again, this movie had for every 4 things it does right, there's just, like, a baffling twist, and the bug zapper is one of those where you just go, "What?" Like, it's so clear they're just trying to wrap the movie up,
Yeah, yeah,
and yet at the same time, like, I can't be mad because it gives us, like, a great sequence of the children getting away, and I
yes.
actually really like that.
Yeah, me
but
too.
it the lead up to it is utterly bizarre.
Bizarre. I love the fact that we get the intro, the WWE style intro. You have Alice on like the altar or whatever. Freddie comes in the doorway, and all of a sudden Alice draws her Kristen power and starts doing the gymnastics down the hall, down the aisle. And Freddie does this like weird, like Robert does this weird, like he's not doing gymnastics. He's doing this weird walk thing. I don't even know what he's doing. They come up to each other and they start beating. Like she starts beating the hell out of him. And he's like laughing at her. It's just it's like, okay, so I don't even know what to say about it. It was amusing to me hearing him walk, but like then it goes from there. It gets just more and more bizarre when you get the bug zapper involved. You get the mirrors involved. You start having this chant and this like this whole memory of what dream masters do and who's the dream master. And it's a weird kind of like it's not necessarily a deus ex machina, but it does, like you mentioned, kind of like, okay, we got to wrap it up now. She's got to kill him. Okay, how are you gonna do that? We'll just have her say this Dream Master stuff. There you go. It's part of it's the movie's title, for Christ's sake. I guarantee the movie's title came first before that.
Oh,
I'm sure.
are you just know it did because Dream Warriors, and they were like, well, Freddy clearly has to be the Dream Master, right? And then
Right.
of course, no, he's not. But
No.
the point is that it was clearly thought of to be like, look, it goes along with everything that Renny Harlin was saying too,
Yep.
because it just makes Freddy look like the hero.
The hero. Yep. It
Good
is a
lord.
bizarre ending. It's a bizarre ending. I'm not gonna lie, but it's not a bad ending, but it's definitely
No, but it's
rushed and
just
bizarre.
so
Yeah.
it's just and again, a big part of it is it was a movie shot during a strike.
Yep.
It's a movie that's 93 minutes. It's a movie that even though Freddy is, the house New Line is the house that Freddy built, they're still not really giving him a whole lot of money to work with. So, there's a lot of cut corners.
Yeah.
And again, like to that point, that's why we look at the Rick Johnson scene. Like the Rick Johnson death scene is comical for that reason because it's just a cost-cutting saving prevention.
Right. Absolutely. It's just yeah. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of that. Luckily, if I feel like the people they had working on it and the actors involved make it work overall for little sequences, and that's what saves the day. Because
Yeah.
once you characters like ones we didn't care about, it would have been a slog and a half to get through for sure. Um, let's see what other notes that I had here. Um, I'm in my note stage where I've kind of gone through everything I need to
Oh
that
yeah.
those parts. Now I'm just looking at the notes that I haven't mentioned yet. How about this? What a weird song to open up the film with. We had Dream Boy last time,
I
and
know.
instead we have this like weird like pop song that doesn't seem to fit. And then it's
Yep.
like it's. I mean, there's some rock later on in it, which is fine, but Freddie needs rock. Basically, Freddie needs rock. Everything else kind of seems like a little weird and off.
Well, I mean, and then there's even an entire sequence, one of the dream sequences, which also we didn't talk about this. There's the great sequence. Again, this movie has brilliant ideas that are not always capitalized on, but when they do, it is done very well.
Right.
But the entire sequence involving Deb and like the
Yes.
pumping iron, but it's set to Sinead O'Connor. The Sinead O'Connor thing is so bizarre, but also it works because of what Freddy does in it. But also the whole sequence involving Alice and Dan trying to get to her, and they keep getting stuck in a Groundhog Day
Groundhog
style
Day.
time loop is great.
Yes. It's actually I remember Robert Englund, like, said that was, like, his one of his favorite sequences in all of Nightmare on Elm Streets. All of them. He said
Yeah.
it is kind of a bizarre thing that, like, he said I actually have the quote, I think here. Yeah, here it is. "Nightmare Park contains my favorite sequence in the entire franchise, and I'm not even in it. Alice is locking up for the night at the Crave-In Diner." Get it? Crave-In, West Craven. Weren't we clever? Then she and Dan walk out to his truck, open the doors, and get in, and then the sequence repeats and repeats and repeats in a time disorienting continuous loop. First time I saw that, I was spooked because it reminded me of how my nightmares tended to function. The repeating exit was the most hypnotic, disturbing, and accurate depiction of a dream I'd ever seen. And I get that. I'm like, you know what? He's not wrong. It's a great sequence there. It feels like a specific kind of nightmare that we don't see. It's a nightmare without Freddy in it,
Yeah.
in a way. And it works though, because it makes sense, because that does kind of happen in your dream. You do weird things like that in your dream world.
100%. And again, that's why it's so effective. And honestly, it makes the crash that much more effective too once it happens. Like,
Yes.
there's a lot of really interesting ideas throughout it.
Mhm.
that really take off, and that is one of them.
Mhm. Mhm. Let's see what else I got. Oh, weird line choice. We meet Alice and she goes out, and her father goes something like, "You're going out dressed like that?" Like
Oh,
she's dressed
yeah.
like a street like a she's dressed like a hooker or something, and like she's dressed in like the most conservative manner I think I've ever seen in a horror movie. It's like a long dress, like everything, nothing wrong. Like, I don't know what he's talking about. Like,
No,
where are you
yeah,
locating?
it's such a bizarre choice. Her father is such a weird character
Yeah,
because, like, on the one hand, I get that he's an alcoholic and all of
yeah,
that, but they just really have such a bizarre relationship anyway, and that line comes off as so cloying in the worst way because I had the same thought. I was like, "She's dressed so conservatively and nice, like, she's wearing, like, a s turtleneck or something, like, what are we doing here?"
what is that like? Yeah, I don't know. It's very strange. Let's see. Oh, I love when I think it was Kristen falls asleep. Was it Kristen or was it Alan? I think it might be Alan. I can't remember which one now. I know Robert Englund plays Freddy Krueger as a nurse briefly, and
Oh, that it is Alice
it is Alice. Okay, it
because
is
it's
Alice.
after
She
she
says
hits her
that.
head.
That's right. That's what I'm thinking. It was after she hit her head on the wall. That's true. And it's so actually creepy. It's actually almost creepier than anything other Freddy stuff that he does. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know, like him as like the smile he's got, and like I know it's Robert Englund, but he does such a great job with his roles either way. I love that bit. I love that bit.
Yeah, and especially the no makeup, right? Like, it just
Yes.
really it's really I love when he pops up and stuff, especially in the Elm Street films where they let him kind of be there, to your point.
Right.
Even part 2 does do that. The
Yeah.
problem is that I wish that they had, especially in that one, and that's looking back, I wish that they had done more of, like, making it a point that that was him. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? And I love that in this one, it's very clear. They
Yes.
don't try to hide it, and so you're even more unnerved, to your point, because you realize it truly is him.
Yes, and that's what's great about it. So, and good for Robert Englund getting his face shown.
100%.
He definitely deserves it for sure. What else? Oh, notice the in the grave sequence, in the cemetery sequences, you got the Thompson graves. So Nancy technically makes an appearance in in
Yeah.
Nightmare for
Hope
Nancy.
she got some residuals for that.
I hope so too. So yeah, I like that though. It's like a nice little that's like a nice little touch to the world building in a way. You got the Thompsons there. They never mention it. They never say anything about it. It just
But
is
they're
there in the
there.
background. So I like that. See.
And it's the little things, man. Like, it's world building is such a thing for you and I, and it's one of the
Mhm.
things that I get a kick out of, like Dial of Destiny. When we
Mhm.
first see Indy in his apartment in the '60s, and the camera's panning around, there's so much stuff to take in that,
Yes.
and not in a way that's like trying to make fans excited. But if you notice it, you're like, oh, that's the Grail painting. You recognize that little things like that.
It's
That's also where
rewarding.
it's rewarding, and it's also where, if you're paying attention, you realize from that moment that Mutt has died,
Yes.
because you can see Mutt's picture on the mantle, and it's got him in the uniform, and next to it is the flag in the box.
Mhm. Mhm. It's there to reward you for being there for it's there
Yeah,
to gives you a little bit of the story. It shows and doesn't tell. And that's always important in a story. If you can show something without telling it, it's so much more enriching for some reason because when you're telling something, you're listening to a character, it's a dialogue. Okay, okay, I'm supposed to be taking this in. When you're visualizing it, you see things like that, you're interacting, engaging with the world. Therefore, you are involved more. Because then when they tell you stuff later on, it's like, yeah, this is what happened. I knew that was the case. So I gotta get involved with it more. It's a rewarding thing for sure. And Dow Destiny is a great. Nightmare doesn't do it nearly as good, but I did like Thompson Graves there as well. So
yeah.
let's see. Anything else? Oh, we kind of mentioned it. Uh, Freddie Kristen's death was, or he kind of goes out a little bit like a punk, to be honest with you. But I love the Freddie Jaws bit. That
The
bit was
Freddy
great,
Jaws bit is great.
awesome. And then you see Freddie in the sun and the sunglasses, and it's like, what are we doing? This is such an image that doesn't work.
I love the gift that it gave us.
Yes, I'll give you
Uh,
that.
I love that, but boy, like, you're also so not wrong. Because again, that was one of those moments. Because I loved it in the beginning when it was like, kind of the Jaws-esque hand going through the water, and then it starts to go through the sand. I love all of that.
Yeah.
and then it just goes too
Too
far.
far. Yeah. If like the sandcastle exploded and all of a sudden they were in a boiler room, then that would have been fine. Because then that's what happens. All of a sudden Freddy takes over. That's what's supposed to happen. Freddy takes over your nice dream and it becomes his. He's the dream master. And when he
Yeah.
does it in the sun, in the sand bit, it becomes this is an opportunity to make a joke. This is an opportunity for Freddy to be MTV Freddy. And that's like when you say the balance is slipping, that's one of the times that it really was showcasing and started to slip. That's what it should have been. It should have been into the boiler room, into another dark sequence where Freddy was taking over, making it the grimy place it should be.
Yeah.
World,
It's
anyway.
I don't know, man. It's just it's we're kind of wrapping this up at this point. So
Yeah.
I'm just gonna kind of dive into my last thoughts on all of it. But like this movie perfectly encapsulates so much of what we talk about when you talk about a movie that is so full of good ideas, and even when the bad stuff doesn't land and it pulls you out of the movie, the rest of the stuff that's so good keeps you in.
Yeah.
That's what this movie is. And while not every idea lands and there's a lot of stupid and baffling choices, I can look past a lot of it because ultimately there's so much fun also to be had
Yeah.
that you can look past it. And it also, we've said it kind of without saying it, but like Renny Harlin actually did direct the shit out of this in the end.
Yeah.
This movie is really nice to look at. The dream sequences all are very memorable in some capacity, whether good or bad,
Yeah.
but still memorable.
Definitely.
And there is a like real, even though there are clearly cost-cutting measures going on at times, the movie doesn't always look it, and when it looks great, it looks really great. I don't think
Yes.
it looks nearly as good as the last movie at times, but the last movie is still the miracle child of this franchise, in my opinion. It is the
Yeah.
ultimate Nightmare on Elm Street film. So, no matter what you were doing, you were probably gonna fall short from that movie for me anyway.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
like, that's just the reality, but regardless of that, it's still fun. It's still good. It offers good to the franchise. It offers good to the universe of these movies as a whole. I like it. I like
Yeah.
it.
I got two more quick things to say, and then we can rank it. I will say one thing didn't mention. We mentioned it briefly. The Roach Motel sequence, great body horror sequence, almost like
Mhm.
Screaming George kind of sequence. The elbows breaking, and then she gets to the Roach Motel after they delivered it. They built it up because she like had freaked out about bugs earlier, thus the bug zapper. And then when Freddy crushes the box, so much whatever comes out of that box, that blood or whatever. I don't know whatever
Yep.
it is. It's like
Yep.
it's so I loved it. It was a great sequence though. And by the way, Renny Harlin, I will say, and talk about movies I do like from Renny Harlin. I did forget to mention that I am a sucker. Your miles may vary. I am a sucker for the Adventures of Ford Fairlane. So there's that as well.
You would be.
Also features Robert Englund in a role. So there you go. That works for that. And he also did Die Hard 2, which I actually still am a sucker
I
for as
I
well.
will not give you that one, but I will say I do like The Long Kiss Goodnight.
No, that's good. That's fair. All right.
I mean, it's not the best, but
All right, that's fair. That's fair. All right, let's wrap this up. Then we are going to rank this movie on a scale of 1 to 11 because we
fuck,
always
he's
turn
made
things up
so
to
many
11.
movies.
I know on PLD Projects, Arrowhead 1 to 11. Speaking of movies, he's also the guy who's right now doing the Strangers trilogy, and I don't
No,
know
we
how
don't
that's
talk
going.
about Bruno.
We don't talk about that. Oh, okay, yeah, interesting. I don't know how they actually got that greenlit to do all three like that, but okay. Anyway,
Because they shot all of them in 30 days. That's how.
true, true. Might as well put it out, I guess. Uh, all right, on a scale of 1 to 11, we always turn things up to 11 here on PLD Project. We have been straight across the board, exactly the same. Original Nightmare on Elm Street from 1984, we both gave a perfect 11. Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, you gave a 6, I gave a 6. And then, of course, Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, we both gave perfect 11s. So now for this one, PJ, what do you give a Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master? I'm very curious.
We're going with a cool 7.5 here. Done.
7.5. Okay.
It's just it. Look, and that's again, we're coming off of my favorite Nightmare film,
Mhm,
one that I gave a perfect rating to. Like I
mhm.
love that movie. That this is not like an indictment on this. I feel like I'm hoping my words have made the point that I think it's a very fun movie. It's just
I
flawed as shit.
it is, and I was between 7.5 and 8 myself. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think I'm gonna give it an 8, not just to be different, but because
It is just to be different. It's fine.
I will say that, like you're gonna talk about soon in another film, there is a bit of nostalgia in this one for me. This was my time growing up. Nightmare 3 was my film, but Nightmare 4 came out so quick afterwards that I kind of saw this at the same time and I have a lot of nostalgic love for it. That gives up another 0.5 for me. So I will break our mold and I'll give this an 8 out of 11 for a. And I always look at this. I want to throw this out there as well. When I say 8 out of 11, that's for a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. Obviously, Nightmare 4, like if you're going to talk about versus the great movies of the universe, is it really an 8 when it comes to that? No, but in terms of it as a Nightmare on Elm Street movie in this franchise, I think an 8 out of 11 works pretty well for me.
It's totally fair. It's totally fair. I'm not gonna give you pushback.
I know you won't. I know you won't. I just want to clarify out there that, like, because
Oh,
sometimes
I know.
I'll give another movie an 8 out of 11, and I actually like it a lot better. I think it's a much better made movie, but yet for some reason, this is what works for me.
Look, we didn't give the original I love Nightmare 3.
Mhm,
I think it's a better movie overall than the original. Do I
mhm,
think it's nearly as well made at times? Maybe not, but,
mhm.
I gave it an 11. You know what else I would give it an 11 if we were talking about it? The Godfather. It
Yeah,
does not make them the same.
right. Absolutely. That's something that's important to throw out there. I think, and sometimes sometimes you kind of lose that in your specific ratings of franchises versus overall. But it's just good to mention. That's all. That'll do it for us this week. This time we are actually going to take it is the holiday time, of course. So Christmas schedules are coming up, holiday schedules are coming up. We are probably not going to be able to do much until the new year. We will come back strong in January. We'll do Nightmare obviously 5 and Nightmare 6, and we're also going to come back and do a Doctor Who episode for the Big Blue Box because they have the Christmas special coming out. So you'll see a lot of us in January. We're just going to say adieu for now, and I hope you guys have a happy holiday. From us here at Two Mediocre White Dude. You'll see me because I got some stuff going on still that are going to go. You won't see PJ till next year. So PJ,
Unless you follow me on social media, in which case you will probably still see me. But yes, we are taking a very festive break because the truth of the matter is I bartend. I'm going to have family in town. You're going to be doing stuff too. Like the next 4 weeks are going to be pretty rough for a lot of us. Doesn't mean rough
time
in
wise, at least. Yeah.
yeah, it's just time wise. Like it's just going to be that kind of thing. So, you know, I
We want to give these
it's
movies their due. We want to actually sit down
yeah,
and actually not have to rush through it and like fight through it. We actually have to watch
but
them
I
and enjoy
also
them.
want you guys to be able to listen.
Yes.
And us doing this also allows you to be able to get through your holidays without having to worry about trying to catch up on an episode or something if you fall behind.
Right.
It's just not going to be one of those things, but we get a sappy on here sometimes, but here we are. We've been doing this now for long enough that it's wild that here we are. We're still doing it going into another holiday season. So seriously, from all of you out there who have subscribed, who are on the Patreon, who follow us on socials, who interact with us, like thank you guys. Because without you guys, we don't do this. I mean, we probably still would. We
Yeah.
would just talk to ourselves,
Yeah.
but like you guys make it better. So
Agreed.
thank you guys for doing this because for you guys to be here with us, it's really cool. So you give us the gift every year to keep going and keep doing this. You guys rock. I
Yeah.
hope you have a great holiday.
Yeah, because every once in a while, our friends on social media will post like how they listen to us or something, and we're like, I
We
still get
had
amazed
that
by that.
happen.
Yeah,
We were a top podcast for
Steve
people.
Shackelford, yeah, actually, yeah, absolutely one of our favorite listeners about Steve
Yeah.
Shackelford, and it's wonderful to see. It just makes it feel like it's all worth it. So we're very happy to do that for you guys. Yeah, got some stuff coming up this month. The rest of the month, I'm still doing review. I'll get at least one more episode of review in. Still got Holy Snokes every week. We're doing Skeleton Crew. I'm not sure how it's going to work over Christmas time as well. Me and Maddie will work that out. We're definitely going to come back and listen and talk about Skeleton Crew for sure. And we do that because that class action live stream is going to come up. I do another live stream here or there when I get a chance. And my Crown Jewels podcast for Queen, I do that every week as well. That's going to keep going as far as I know. I might take a week or two off here on that as well. We'll see. It's all kind of up in the air. But then January will come back strong. And I promise some more consistency. And that's what we'll do. But if you do like this and like it, subscribe. Join the Patreon, patreon.com/PLD Projects, Oscar Goodell, Brennan Buckingham. Great crew. If you can't do that, I understand, but you can always help us out fighting the almighty algorithm by commenting, by liking, by letting your friends know, by talking to us in the comments. Let us know what you think. What do you think about Nightmare 4? Do you like it better than 3? Maybe someone's out there who likes it better than 3. Who knows? Just talk about it. We love it. So we will see you next time then when we can. I'm actually very interested to watch Nightmare 5. I remember watching it when I was younger. I had nostalgia for it. And then I watched it again much later on. And I really felt it took a bigger dip down. I'm curious to see where it lands for me this time around because I have less hype about it in my mind now. I'm like kind of the bar is lower set. So who knows? Maybe it'll supersede it. Maybe I'll have fun with it. But I'm not sure. We'll find out.
Look, I have not seen it in over a decade, probably. This is one I do not revisit, like, at all. Again, I really only revisited 1, and that's pretty much it, and then from time to time 3, and of course, New Nightmare. So, it's gonna be a weird one for me to go back into it, especially knowing this is the one where the wheels really start to come off.
Yes, Nightmare 5, The Dream Child, which is directed, of course, by Stephen Hopkins.
Mm-hmm.
Director of Predator 2, director of Blown Away, Lost in
You mean the
Space.
best Predator movie? Agreed.
No, I will disagree with you. I like it, though. I actually like it better.
I fucking love it.
I know you do. Yeah, so there it is, folks. We will see you next time. Again, much love. See you soon, guys.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.